I'm Shannon Thresher, and this is 30 Second Tactics. Today, we're going to talk about considerations you guys should have if you're going to build a range or before deciding if you're going to build a range. Now, it's mostly talking about law enforcement ranges, but most of it will transfer over to private ranges too. You just got to, make those adjustments as they're required for your particular needs. So, here we go. All right, so you want to build a range for your department. What are some things you want to consider? Is it more than you can... Are you biting off more than you can chew? Or, what do you want to get in line before you stick the first shovel in or pour the first yard of concrete? So first thing you want to consider is who's going to use your facility? Is it just going to be your department? Is it going to be just your instructors? Will you allow other law enforcement instructors to use it to come in and teach classes to your guys? You allow military instructors on, or is there just going to be something in the rules about just civilian? They're all things you want to consider. So, if you're going to let other departments come on your property and, utilize your facility and absorb your liability, you're going to have some MOUs, some memorandums of understanding, and other protocols. Put it in writing. You guys are cops, you know this. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Okay? The instructors. Are we going to allow other departments to come train under our instructors? Are we going to let them bring their own instructors on? This all needs to be documented ahead of time. Are we going to charge fees? We're going to talk about maintenance in a minute. There needs to be money coming in, not just initially, but continually. We're going to let civilians come and shoot on our range. Maybe, once a month, once a week, whatever. When we're not using it, are you going to let the community in to come use it? And think about all the liability that's going to invite if you do. They're going to have to sign release forms? Are they going to have some kind of minimum training? How are you going to staff it? Are you going to have your guys, your range officers, on the weekends or whenever, covering for civilian use? How are we going to vet these civilians? We don't want to, be training green on blue or whatever they call that. We don't want to train the guys that are going to turn that training around on us, right? And again, are there going to be fees? You're going to set up some kind of civilian shooting club that allows them to shoot there. These are all things you need to consider. Okay, maintenance. We talked about that. There's the initial cost of building the range, and then there's a lot of maintenance to go on. Okay, so what are we going to need to maintain? Well, the range itself, obviously. The grass is the number one thing I see going to all the different ranges I've been to. Is there's always a lot of grass either on the range or around the range that needs to be mowed. Okay, is this a department range? Do we have trustees that are going to do that? Do we have volunteers that are going to do that? Is it in the budget to pay a private, lawn care company to come in and maintain it? Or is the poor range officer, range master going to get stuck with it as an additional duty? Okay, target stands, barricades, they're going to get shot up. They're going to get tore up by the weather. Are we going to have a place to store them out of the weather? This is clearing barrels, safety area, all this stuff, things to consider, that you can't just build it and leave it out in the weather and expect it to be, in tip-top shape 5 or 10 years later. Trash cans. Are you going to have regular trash cans? Do you live in the city where you got to haul off all your trash? Is the facility in the county where you can burn your wood barricades and your paper targets? Are we going to have separate trash cans to say, put all your paper and cardboard in here, but don't put your plastic ammo boxes in here because we don't want them in the burn pile? The range itself, are we going to have covered break areas? Are we going to train in all weather, and are we going to make them sit in the rain while they're waiting to shoot next? Are we going to, budget for some covered areas, some break areas, some safe areas where they can sit down and eat lunch away from guns and ammo, so that, they can come down off their 10 out of 10 safety consciousness kind of thing and just go relax for a little bit? Restrooms. If you have a facility that's just going to be a minimum berm type range, the guys come out once or twice a year and qualify and go home, and they're never there for more than a couple hours, then maybe you don't need to spend the extra money on restrooms. But if you're going to have any kind of facility where you're going to do training, guys are going to be out there 4, 6, 8 hours a day, you're going to have restrooms. Now, that may be a whole big thing connected to city sewer. That may be a outhouse kind of a thing. It may be the couple of times a year when you need it for extended, you rent porta potties and put them out there, but you have to consider it. And I know there's always the guys that are like, oh, I'll just go find a bush. That's fine, but we have guys that don't want to do that. We have women that definitely don't want to do that. So that needs to be considered. First aid. Are we going to have, one of those metal first aid boxes nailed to the side of the building? And if so, are we going to maintain it? Are we going to have a record of when the last time it was checked? When the last time we're sure there's not a wasp nest in it? Are we going to have AEDs? I hate to say it, but old fat cops having heart attacks on range day is a common thing. Or maybe not common, but it does happen. It does need to be considered. AEDs are expensive. Are we going to leave one out there? Are we going to have it in the protocol where we bring one out there on range day? Something to consider. Classroom. A lot of ranges aren't going to have a classroom, guys. I understand that. But if you're building a facility that's going to have a classroom, that's going to add a lot of things to consider for your maintenance besides the initial construction of the classroom. Okay, we've got a classroom. Okay, the days of chalkboards and whiteboards are pretty much over. It's going to be PowerPoint and videos and TVs and AV and IT equipment. Okay, are we going to keep that on site and properly secured, or is that going to be on the protocol that we bring it out every time we use the range? Lighting. Okay, you're going to have lighting, even if you have, a lot of windows in your classroom. You're going to have lights for classroom stuff, writing. Whether that's portable lights or skylight type things that let a lot of natural light in, or what have you. It's just something you got to consider. You got to put it in the budget. HVAC, heating and cooling. If you live in a really hot area, you better have air conditioning. If you live in a really cold area, you better have heat. That may be something as simple on a not quite built up range as having a generator to power those things on range days. It might be something that needs to hook into city power, county power. It just depends, where you're at, what you're doing. But again, all things you need to consider. And your basic learning supplies, pens, pencils, erasers for the dry erase board, that kind of stuff. That stuff, will disappear. It will be used up normally, and you got to have a plan in the budget for resupplying it. And again, to restrooms, besides, keeping the maintenance of the restrooms and, keeping them clean and not disgusting, you got to have paper towels. You got to have toilet paper, stuff like that. You got to have your feminine products. All that stuff needs to be considered. And again, first aid and AED. If we have a classroom, we're going to keep it in the classroom. Is the classroom always locked when we're not using it? So we need to have one outside too. Inside, again, I'm not saying there's a perfect answer, but these are things that you need to consider. Equipment storage, ammo storage. The bigger departments are probably going to have ammo storage on site. The smaller departments may have it, buy it as they need it, or may have it stored at the station and bring it out to the range. Again, something to consider. Targets, target stands, barricades, staples, tape, binders, all that kind of stuff. Are you going to keep it on site? If so, you better have a nice, secure building, because bless their hearts, cops will walk off with targets and target stands and barricades and staples and everything else that's not glued down, not to mention the regular criminal element of the area. So you got to have it secure. You got to have it where it's going to stay dry. You don't want to come in and we haven't been at the range in 6 months because it's been too cold to shoot. Now we come out and you open the range building, and because it wasn't climate controlled, every target in there is covered with mold. You don't want to have that issue. Okay, like I said, it's got to be secure. It's got to be climate controlled, or maybe has to be. There has to be an inventory procedure. That other department we might let come out, and then, we come back and all our targets are gone because they thought they were free. There's got to be procedures and accountability. So instructors, who are we going to say is qualified to be an instructor, to be a range safety, to be in charge, to be responsible when somebody shoots themselves in the foot? So are we going to say, there's a procedure departmentally that they have to be approved or appointed? Do we want the FBI certification? Do we want an NRA certification? Do we want, a state, either like a post or a ATOA type, Tactical Officer Association, something like that? ILFE is now running, the International Association of Law Enforcement Fire Instructors is now running certified courses, and there's others out there. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I'm saying whichever you're going to accept, or even if you're going to accept them all, you need to have that in the SOP. You need to have it backed up for when something goes wrong and you go to court, or something goes right. You just got to be able to say, yeah, we had the right guys on the range at the right time. So safety. Obviously, some of the safety stuff is going to be the same everywhere you go, and some of it's going to have to be unique because of your location. If you're ranged out in the woods, you probably need to add something about, snakes and ticks and stuff to your safety briefing. If you're in the city, maybe not. Maybe you need to have something, that's more specific to where you are. The standardized safety. Put some signage up. Yes, every range day should start with a safety briefing, but there's going to be that one guy that wasn't paying attention and said he didn't hear it, or whatever. So put some signage up. It protects you. It makes your guys safer, and when they're not safe, it protects you from the liability. Enforcement. If we have a bunch of safety rules and somebody breaks them, what's the protocol? Are these safety violations considered minor and so they get a warning? Are these safety violations considered major so they're off the range? Do we have the authority to kick other departments off the range? Do other departments' instructors have the authority to kick our guys off the range? That all needs to be thought out beforehand. And certifications for the safety. What are we accepting as the minimum? So to do all this, we got to find some money, right? You got to have that funding. Where are we going to find it? Well, the first place we're going to find it, hopefully, is in the department's budget. If that doesn't work, or you need to supplement that, there are grants out there. The NRA is pretty good for giving law enforcement help with building ranges. You have to look into that if that's what's going to work for you. And again, the usage fees, whether other departments or civilians are going to use your range, and they incur some fees to do that. And those fees, and again, that needs to be written down to what those fees are going to go to. And they're not going to or maybe they are, but it needs to be written down. I was going to say they're not going to the end of the year Christmas party for the range officers. And community support, have a fundraiser. Hey, this department A wants to have their own range. It's going to save us time and money, get our guys better trained than using the old facility we used at XYZ's department. And so we want to reach out to the community, and this is going to help you guys make us better cops. So we'd like to help you help us, in the financial side of it. And like I said, use your imagination. If you find a legal, moral way to find some money to fund your range, then that's a good way. So in summary, guys, who's going to use your facility? Who's going to teach on your facility? How are you going to maintain your facility? And how are you going to fund your facility? These are the questions you need to ask before that shovel hits the ground for the first time. Before we get to the questions, which since this is a video, just put your questions down in the comments. But I want to add one last thing to consider when you go to actually build the range. There's basically 3 different ranges you'll see. Well, I say 4. You might see one that's just pure dirt or gravel, and then you're going to see one that's covered in grass, and then you're going to see one that's covered in grass but has some concrete walkways, usually at the different distances that your state qualification requires. And you can see ones that are fully concreted. There are pluses and minuses to all of them. The grass ranges are great when you have to go down on a knee and you're not banging on gravel or on concrete. The grass ranges are great when you're training in August in a hot area and you don't have to stand on concrete that's 105 degrees. When it rained yesterday, the grass is not great. You're going to get muddy uniforms. You're going to get slippery surfaces, which are going to create a safety issue. Okay, the concrete ranges, the all concrete ranges, are the best when it comes to no mud, good traction, easy to pick up your brass at the end of the day. But they come with the disadvantages. The main one being they get really, really hot. If you have a 25 or 50 yard by 25 or 50 yard concrete slab, besides the expense that incurs, that's going to reflect a lot of heat. On those hot summer days, you're going to have guys sweating, burning their feet up, being a lot hotter than they need to be if it was a grass range. So all things to consider. Personally, I like a mix of either grass and gravel or and concrete, or just gravel or something like that. It kind of matches the middle of cost versus usability, if you will. But anyway, guys, that's a super brief things to think about if you're going to build a range. Now, obviously, this is focused on law enforcement, but if you're building a civilian range, either a commercial one or just one for you and your friends to use, there's a lot of things to think about. So again, put your questions, comments, concerns down in the comments. Share this video a whole bunch, and we'll get the word out. And guys, that's what I have for you this time. As always, work, train, repeat. Stay safe.